Alrighty, folks, we're going to talk a little bit about some of our tools here, um, specifically content-aware fill, content-aware move. I'm going to start showing you how to begin using some of the patching tools. They are generally used to fix things. Usually someone's got pimples or something like that and you want to fix that. You can use them for evil. I'll show you here in a minute. We're also going to cover a little bit of Liquify this week. So what I'm doing is giving you tools that you can then use, I think, in a lot of interesting ways. So we're going to start first with content-aware fill. Okay, so let's suppose you have this picture of all these sheeps, and like you hate this one right here. You're like, this sheep is lame. I want him gone. Okay, or her gone. I don't know. Okay, there are a couple different ways you could do this. You could get the clone stamp tool, right? Set a target, and then come in and clone stamp the sheep out. Okay, that will work. There are a couple of issues. One is you notice it repeats, right? So you have to move things around. Okay? Otherwise, it's very, very obvious what you've done. The other thing is going to take you some time to do it. Okay. Now, the other thing too is that's also destructive editing. So if you're going to use the clone stamp at any point, by the way, you can do this. You make a new layer. Make sure your clone stamp is set to current and below. Okay. And when you sample here, make sure you have your new layer selected. Okay, you can do the same thing, except now that exists on a separate layer. Okay, that's the much better way to do this. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of the background, just to be safe. Okay, and I am going to grab my lasso tool, and I'm going to select the sheep. Now in this case, Photoshop only needs a little bit in order to figure out what to do with this. Okay. So you don't have to make a big selection. In fact, I have plenty here. I could do less. I could come in. Honestly, like 5 or 10 pixels is enough on either side to do this. Let me show you how it looks if you do it straight up, and then there's a new way that Photoshop has in the newer versions that's really neat. So I'm going to hit Shift Delete or Shift Backspace. On my fill, I want to make sure I'm on content aware. Okay. Color adaptation is checked. Mode is normal. Opacity 100%. I'm going to hit OK. Okay. And you notice what Photoshop does. Okay. And here's where it gets a little bit tricky, right? So some of this looks okay. Look, it did a pretty good job considering it's just going off of an algorithm, but you'll notice, like, Photoshop also pulled in some of the sheep from the background because it's trying to figure out how to make this, like, fill in, right? So this sometimes works if you don't have a lot of stuff going on, okay? The better way to do this now, and normally I don't like to go through the menu tools because that's like, again, it's like watching grandma surf the internet. But if you go to Edit, Content Aware Fill, Photoshop now has a dialog box. Okay? And it does a much better job. And it also gives you, and you can even zoom in here, a preview of what's going to happen. Okay? It also shows you what it's selecting from. Okay? So in this case, if I deselect some areas, okay, you'll notice how this changes in the preview. Okay. If I deselect too much, right, it gets real weird. Okay. So this is actually really nice because you're going to get a better result, and you can come in. By the way, if you select too much or deselect too much, hold down Alt, and you can add to that selection again. Okay. All right. So let's zoom in. That looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to deselect. And since I did this on a new layer, okay, I have the fill on a completely new layer. You notice you don't get the blur nearly as much. Okay. The one thing you do have here is the shadow, right? So if I was going to do this like for really reals, I would come in afterwards and I would knock this shadow out as well. Because it is sort of odd for it to be sitting there. Okay, let me show you a couple other tools here real quick as well. So underneath keyboard shortcut of J, okay, you have your spot healing brush patch tool, your red eye tool, and your content aware move tool. Okay, what the content aware move tool does is when you make a selection, it is going to try to fill that selection as you move it. And I'll demonstrate again here with the sheep. So I'm going to select, well, let's start first. I'm going to select all of the sheep. Okay. And I'm going to move it over here, and I have my transform tools on drop selected. So let's just shrink it down a little bit, put it back a little bit further, and hit return. Okay. Right, and you notice what it does, it almost gets it. Okay. Right, so it does everything except it missed a little bit of the face here. But otherwise, in all honesty, like, right, this is actually pretty good. It's got the majority of the sheep here. If I was doing this and wanted to add, right, I would go ahead and clone the face. Okay. Now, let me step back. There are two settings up here, right? There's move and there's extend. Okay, now if I do move, I'll show you the difference. I'm going to do the same thing, move it over here, shrink it, hit return. Okay. What Photoshop does, you'll notice, is it tries to fill in the sheep from before, okay, and move this over. And again, sort of hilariously, it lost the face some, okay. And again, I will just say this is pretty good for just being a dumb algorithm, okay. Here's the other fun thing you can do when you change it to the extend option. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select just the front half of the sheep here. Okay. And now I'm just going to move this up a little bit. I'm going to rotate it just a little bit, just like that, and hit return. Okay. And you'll notice what Photoshop did. Right, let me deselect so you can see. Okay. Essentially, what it's done is it's tried to patch between the two. Okay, so if I select this again, move, let me rotate up quite a bit more like this. Okay, hit return. You notice not quite as successful this time. I mean, this area looks nice. That's because I pushed it just a little bit too far. Okay, so if I step back, I move it just a little bit, again, kind of like this. Rotate it just a bit, pull it up. Okay, Photoshop's going to do a much better job overall, okay, of moving this around. So with these tools, what I would like you to do is feel free to play around a little bit, okay, with content aware fill, content aware move. Okay. If I grab this one back here, you can start making some really kind of interesting things that start happening. The only problem I have with the content aware move is that you do have to do it on the actual layer, okay? So you can't have the background copy. So I want you to go ahead and give this a shot. Follow those directions. For this file, go ahead and make some abominations from sheep. I'm down with whatever you want to try. Okay. You know. Yeah, see, that's not going to do it. It's got too much surrounding. Okay, it's all right. I will say where this works best is if, like, for example, here. Okay, let me change it back to move. I want to move this sheep over here, make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Photoshop's going to do a pretty decent job of doing that because you can't really see, right? It's smaller. I would then come in, if I was doing this with my clone stamp tool, right, and just brush the edges so it looks like it belongs there. Okay. So there you go. Give that a shot. Try it out. I'm not saying you should try it out on your friends' faces on pictures, but give it a shot. You can do some pretty fun things.